Welcome to another episode of Chatting the Boys. I'm your host, Stephen Chalcombe, and joined with me tonight again is William. William has I believe, a game of Would You Rather for us again. This might be part three. I'm going to find out here in 5 seconds when I turn
Yeah, I
it
think
over
so.
to
Yeah,
him.
par three sounds good. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I guess with that being said, yeah, take over. Give us what you got.
Uh, so there's just different ways of manipulating kind of the same topics. So I kind of just I heard this on it's probably 105.3 The Fan, for the Cowboys radio, down in Texas, and they kind of worded it one way. So I'm gonna kind of flip it around and kind of give my own little twist to it. And you, so obviously in the broad scheme of things, the money always matters, right? Especially when you're tied up against the cap. There's no there's that's the most important thing is the salary cap. But
True.
if everything is remotely close in this scenario, okay, the question is, would you rather? These are all players that are outside of the Cowboys organization. Which one of these players would you rather bring in to fill the role that they would be coming in? Whether they are replacing a current Cowboy that is also a free agent,
Hmm.
you know,
Okay.
or is it somebody that is upgrading the position and that position doesn't technically have a hole? So my question is, would you rather sign as a free agent Bobby Wagner? Would you rather sign Odell Beckham Jr., to play wide receiver, or would you rather trade for DeAndre Hopkins? Now, the option on DeAndre Hopkins is, Cardinals want to move on from him. He wants out of there. He wants more money. But if Arizona doesn't want to pay him and they're changing over their thing, they might just cut him anyway. So Hopkins is obviously going to cost you capital and money if you trade for him, or just money if he gets cut and you want to
Hmm.
sign him, and probably more money than Odell Beckham Jr. and Bobby Wagner. But the
So,
question is, which value, which player is worth it to you? And then I'll
um,
I'll, I'll reply to
with
if you
with
want,
no
if you'd
other
like.
context, obviously.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so
you got to figure you're signing Bobby Wagner to replace LVE. Odell Beckham Jr. and Hopkins are just going to probably be your second or your third receiver, and then move, gallop down, if you will, a peg.
sure. So
You know,
I actually think this is 95% an extremely easy answer. The other 5% is where it gets a little hairy because you're
okay,
relying on the draft, right? So I would be all in on signing OBJ at whatever the market dictates. Whether
okay,
that be, I would guess in the ballpark of 20 million. I would like to think it's less than that. Somewhere between 15 and 20. I'm not sure. I'm not a contract analyst, whatever that is. But
capologist.
yeah, I mean, so assuming the numbers were right, I would much rather just sign OBJ, right? Like you've already said, it's not going to cost you draft capital. He's at the point of playing next year. He'll be over a year removed from the injury. Uh, Granted, that's obviously also a year older, but um,
Hmm.
he's a high IQ football player. Even if his explosiveness did take a hit, which I think we have to assume he will, just from being away from the game because of age and
Yeah,
blah
yeah.
blah blah. He's still going to fit really well in whatever the West Coast offense we see from Mike McCarthy. That's also under the assumption I would prefer to keep LVE over Bobby Wagner. Again, assuming the numbers were right. I know there's a lot of concern with LVE and his neck issues, but he played really well last year. Maybe you kind of compare him to Tyron Smith, where you just unfortunately, and even Sean Lee, quite honestly, where you kind of have to set aside 4 games a year where he's not going
Yeah.
to play. I mean,
Yeah.
that's shitty, but I think if that's going to be the case, you get LV a lot cheaper than you would Bobby Wagner
Yep.
for fairly close to the same output, if you will. And yeah, I'm just not trading for DeAndre Hopkins. I think Arizona said last I heard Arizona's looking for a second. Not that DeAndre Hopkins isn't worth a second. I think he definitely is, but as you've already said, giving them a second plus renewing a contract where he's going to want north of 20 million easily. Yeah, it's not interesting to me.
Yeah. So okay. So interesting. I Did not anticipate you saying those things.
So and I guess the
Yeah,
5%
yeah,
that
yeah.
where I
Okay, yeah.
didn't say where it gets hairy is I think you sign OBJ with the intent with 1,000% the intent of going wide receiver in the first round, and that's not to reach on a player. Like you know, take a guy if he's there. If he's not there, then he's not there. But I think you plan for that, and then you have your top four receivers, right? Like you
Your
have
built-in
CD,
insurance
OBJ,
too. Yeah.
Michael Gallup, and then whoever you draft, and then hopefully Tolbert gets his head out of his ass. But I mean, and then OBJ is a great bridge player for the next 2 years for whoever you just drafted.
That's a good point. Okay, yeah. Oh, so are you so? And I guess I didn't ask this too. If you're saying like sign OBJ to the going rate, whatever his value is, um, do you just tell him, hey man, we'll give you that, but for 1 year? Or are you saying you're okay with doing the going rate for 2 years? Is that what you're saying?
I think I'd be okay with a 2-year deal. I'm sure it would have to be a 3-year deal. Um, I've really been trying to learn more about how these contracts work, and so I'm probably going to say something crazy. But I think it would have to be a 3-year deal, with the
Okay.
third year really just being like a void year,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
just I guess to spread some of the money out or whatever. But yeah, I'm
Did-
I'm okay with the 2-year deal.
Okay. So, full disclosure, I was going to answer this differently, and I still am, but I'm going to change my decision. I was originally going to say I'm okay with signing Bobby Wagner,
Hmm.
um, because I do think, or he's. Did he make All Pro again this year, or was this last time? Whatever. Anyway, or he's definitely in a Pro Bowl or whatever. But he's been All Pro or first team or second team All Pro like 6 of the last 8 years or something like that. And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't watch a lot of Rams football, but or Seattle football when he was there or whatever. But my guess is half of those he earned and half of them he got because of his name. That'd just be my guess. Or if even if it's like 6 of the 8 he earned and then the last two are just because of his name. But LVE was really good last year. But my guess is LVE is going to try to get paid one more time. And if we can get Wagner for 1 year, that's where originally I was going to go. But now as I'm going through this, I think the Cowboys are going to extend Dak, right?
Hmm.
And that means that they got to do whatever they can to get the best players around him. I don't personally. Odell Beckham is the last of my options. I'm saying go trade for Hopkins. Um, and that obviously is going to cost you more. Or I just try to say, hey, I mean, or you wait him out. Maybe the Cardinals will cut him, and then he's on the open market, and then then you maybe you're still okay with paying him, but you don't have to give up the two for him.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Because
could
we
tell me
I,
that
I we
scenario
need we need
existed,
to
then
see, dude. We need to see. I mean, I would rather not pay Dak. I would rather not extend him and trade for Hopkins and go all in for these couple of years. I'm not saying it's the best scenario of all scenarios. I'm just saying maybe it's the best scenario of these three.
well, so I mean, I would push back. I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're saying. I would just push back in that. So say you sign OBJ.
You know,
Um, I think assuming OBJ is healthy, it's an immediate, at least an equivalent to a Michael Gallup, if not an immediate upgrade.
okay.
Um, and then I think that allows you to obviously have your first and second round draft pick where you go. Um, I think you get maybe then in that case you go tight end. And if you're all in, you draft, you say Darnell Washington at 26, assuming he's there,
Mm.
or is it Nair or Mayer from Notre Dame?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Two
yeah.
guys that can
However you say his name. Yeah,
two
yeah.
guys that can just really stretch the field. You also do that with zero intent of ever asking your tight end one that you just drafted to just block. Like he's an offensive weapon at that point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then you go offensive guard in second round, assuming there's a guy there. Right? I don't have that name, but
Sure.
I'm sure there's a
We
dude
will
that's
soon.
worth
We will
going in the
soon.
second round. And I think that's the same as going all in while you're building your roster for the future because you're still getting to draft as opposed to giving up a draft pick for a aging wide receiver who don't get me wrong, he's still talented. I just if you could tell me I could get OBJ and still be in the position to be going all in, I would take that route.
Let me ask you one more, and then we can head out on this, or one more caveat. You have those three options, or none of them at all. Which one do you choose? Like the none of the law would be the caveat of you don't sign any of them, but you use that money, let's just say, to bring back LVE and like three other veteran type players that fill in the roster. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to choose one of them, but you got to spend the money somehow. So, oh, but in your case, you picked Odell Beckham. So would you rather, maybe $8 to $10 million on, your typical run of the mill
So
wide receiver that could help?
I, this is actually a harder question,
Yeah, yeah,
and I don't think there's a way to answer this in a vacuum. But I think that's because so they traded Amari Cooper last year because they wanted to have that money to sign their own, right? Like
yeah,
failed to sign,
yeah,
they failed to re-sign Randy Gregory. We're past
yeah,
that. We're a year past that
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Um,
Good decision, by the way.
but they still haven't used that money, right? Like
That's true.
so now they're looking to extend Dak among other players and restructure to just hoard this money. Who are they re-signing with this money? I get it. CeeDee Lamb and Trayvon Diggs is the answer
Yeah,
there, but like
yeah. We need answers now, though.
when are they
Yeah,
going to do that? Right? Like
yeah, yeah.
so in a vacuum, it's pretty hard to answer that because I think the Dallas front office is still trying to dig up money for people they don't even plan on re-signing. Right? Like I mean, so what I was going to bring up earlier is Dallas, as of now, is willing to let, and I have no problem with this, willing to let LVE and Donovan Wilson go into free agency. Again, let me reiterate, I have no problem with that. I think that's fine. Um, if Dallas fails to bring back both of them, the defense is going to significantly regress next year. So them saving all of this money to not spend it
Sure.
is dumb. So that's a long way to say I guess I'd rather them just spend the money on OBJ. Like if you're going to have all this money, spend it on something. Um, and I think OBJ being a year removed from his injury, like I think I'm comfortable with that signing. Again, obviously if the medicals are there and whatnot.
Yeah, it scares the hell out of me because that's something that like the Cowboys never pull the trigger on. They're going to pull the trigger on it, and he's going to get hurt seventh snap of the first game of the year. And
Yeah. Um, it doesn't help he's had it happen twice and it's on
yeah,
been on both
yeah.
knees or both legs,
That's that's
whatever.
that's my point is how the hell is he? I mean, because that's what I've heard too. 15 million, 15 to 20 million dollars. How could he possibly garner that kind of money? Because you got to remember before that happened, he was really good in the playoff run and in the Super Bowl again, what with the Rams, whatever.
Hmm.
But before that, he did nothing in Cleveland. So I just
I
don't understand. Like, is it everybody just hoping that he's going to go back to what he was in the Giants? That was like 5 years ago now.
yeah, I mean I'm sure that's what the average person's waiting
Like,
on.
fuck that, man. That's a $5 to $10 million player, and I still think that's too much money.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean
I got to see somebody give him the money. I almost don't believe it. Even I mean, that's what everybody's saying. I'm like, man, there's no,
I
he's
think
not around.
I think you're obvious. I mean, I would expect to get a fraction of the player OBJ ever was. I A fraction of OBJ is better than most receivers, though. Right? I mean, assuming he can
Yeah,
play.
as long as he plays
Yes,
as long as he
assuming he can
plays like
play.
15 of the 17 games, sure,
But
I'd be okay with that. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's tough. Like, I mean, yeah, he has a pretty serious injury history, so I get
for
it.
sure.
But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you asked me how I would spend the money. That's
No, no,
just
yeah,
how I
no,
would
yeah,
spend the
no,
money.
yeah. So I was just, and I asked some questions and I kind of shape it, see if the change, if anything changes. But yeah, I mean, that's all. That's all I had.
But so if the question was slightly different, where it was like,
Oh,
hey,
okay.
would you rather sign OBJ or have Donovan Wilson and LVE? I mean, I'm taking Dono and LVE all
Okay, yeah,
day.
yeah, me too, me too.
And then I'm still going into the draft with the mindset as I'm hoping like a guy like Smith and Jigba is dropping a 26, right? Like I think a lot of people have hits on him because he's a little slow and has he was hurt his last year at college or whatever, but uh, according to all the scouts, he's
Yeah,
he can get open. He can make all the plays and he can get open. He's just a little slow. But whatever, man. Like give me a dude who can get open all day and catch the ball wherever Dak's gonna put it. So
Jerry Rice ran a 4.6.
I didn't know that. I mean, I'm not shocked, but I mean,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
So I did hear slightly more off topic. There was a stat I heard a while ago. I'd have to go dig it up, but so Dallas has averaged like
Hmm.
the bottom five of the slowest drafted receivers over the last like 20 years. Like they haven't drafted anybody who's
Mm.
ran sub 4.45 in
Yeah, I
like
believe
some
it.
crazy amount of time.
If you would have said, if you'd have asked me, like, I probably would have said that because you got to think about it. Dez was never fast.
No.
Terrence Williams wasn't fast. You know, CD's not fast. I mean, amongst other wide receivers,
Right. Yeah.
amongst
Yeah.
human beings, he's fast, but against
Yeah.
other receivers,
Yeah.
he's
He's
not.
faster than me.
You know, they drafted Cole Beasley, right?
Yeah. He was white.
Oh no,
So
was he a free agent? Oh, was he a? But anyway, but yeah, no, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah,
it's just wild to
yeah,
think.
that
Like I
they,
mean,
yeah,
you just
they've,
just
they've,
forever drafting slow dudes. I don't know.
yeah, no, just, I don't know, I guess, yeah, I guess the really, really fast guys usually go really hot, really above them or later in, and they just like, fuck it, let's just get a slow linebacker than a fast receiver. That's
Right.
gonna get cut anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay,
Yeah.
not
All right.
bad.
Well, all right, man. Let's wrap it up there. Let's call it a day before we get ahead of ourselves too much. We'll
Yep.
catch you all next time.